Hello, Graham.
Oh, hello, Faith, my dear. Hi.
And welcome back, everyone, to Tea at 3. I'm Faith Schmidt, and this is Graham Care. So, last week, we talked about all of the things that we had talked about throughout, at the time it had been 22 episodes, and what impacted us the most. And through that conversation came to... for this week, thinking about habits, because a lot of things that we talked about correlated pretty well with good habits that we were trying to instill or bad habits that we were trying to get rid of. And so this week we've been pondering about habits, good and bad, and so forth.
You know, I went whizzing back thinking about this one. Do I have a habit that is lifelong? Something that I have always done and is deeply rooted in me and is unlikely to be able to be changed, that I can then spend the week trying to change? You ready for it? When I was 10, I was raised in the hotel business. I don't have any brothers and sisters. I didn't have any friends because I lived in the middle of a forest, okay? So I had supper with my mom and dad in the restaurant, and then they would work for the rest of the evening, and I'd go to my room, which was one of the guest rooms converted into a room for me. And in my room, I didn't have a computer. I didn't have an iPhone. I didn't have a TV set. I had a radio. So I would go and I'd turn on my radio, and my radio was my companion. And I've looked back over my life now, and just immediately after our time last week, I went to this little radio thing that I have. It's a high definition radio now. Pulls in a great signal, got a wonderful speaker. And I turned it on by habit, literally, to find out what was going on. And I got to know what was going on, and I didn't like what it was that I heard that was going on, but I kept on listening to it until the idea that you and I had last week came up. Is there a habit that you have that you'd like to change? Yes, I'd like to stop going to this radio as my companion. When Trina died, that radio took over. Instead of me being at my breakfast table and lunch table with her talking, I used to say to her, let's keep talking, darling. Let's listen to the radio, because there's going to be a time when one or either of us is going and leaves the other one behind, and then we're going to be listening to the radio. And she said, okay, and we talk. So this week, I have turned off my radio. But you remember what we said? We have to take a habit and replace it. So I want to hear what you've dealt before I tell you what I did as a replacement. So
Yeah, that's okay. So I started out trying to think of a specific bad habit that I wanted to get rid of, and couldn't pinpoint it because there was too many, and then got really focused on it and kind of spiraled down into like feeling a little bit worthless because I was so focused on like the bad things that I do that are hard to stop. And then kind of had this, my brain, when I get like that, I tend to just wipe it all clean and kind of forget about it. And so I forgot about it for a day or two. And then I randomly decided to completely rearrange my room and swap all of my, like my desk and my bed and everything. We have 2 rooms, and I just swapped where everything was because one of the rooms is brighter and that's the room I wanted to be in. I rearranged my room, and then my housemate, we used to, back in the day, we worked at the same camp and we were in a band together at the camp. And so we both play music, but we hadn't been doing so, even though we lived together and there's just guitars everywhere. My housemate was like, hey, do you want to play music with me? And I was like, yeah, I do. And so we played music for a while, and that was something that I hadn't done for a while. And then there's this thing called Inktober, which is a drawing prompt for one per day for every month of October. It's just one word. Like the first one was fish. And I was like, oh, well, I haven't drawn in a little while and it would be nice to have a reason to do that. And so usually, so I have this instinct of not wanting to do the popular thing. And I've talked before about how like striving to be unique is a problem for me because it makes me lonely oftentimes. And so I decided to forget that and just participate in this thing that I thought was kind of cheesy and like do the drawing prompts. And so I was behind because it's every day of October. And so I caught all the way up to today and then did like the next couple days. And so I did that for 3 days. And so by the time that I like had done all these things that I realized I were good habits from the past that I loved doing, and then I got to today and I'm like, oh, I kind of haven't been doing the bad habits because I've been filling my life with these good habits. And so it just kind of accidentally like made my life better by focusing on the things that I like doing that are good for me.
Yeah. Well, do you know what I love about that? It seems to me, using the analogy we've used in the past, which is riding a bicycle, you don't have to think about riding a bicycle. So you don't really have to think necessarily about changing a bad habit into a good habit. The more you focus upon that, I think the more you wrestle with it, and the more uptight you get. But what it seems like you did is, rather than do what I did, which was try and tough my way through an old habit into a new one, you actually moved into doing something and recognized at the end of the week that you'd done it. In other words, you rode a bike through the week and it was
Yeah,
okay.
I actually found a notebook and was able to put something in it every day for at least 4 days now. So that's a record for me. The notebook is mostly full and there's only like 10 pages left, but
by all means, keep on filling in that, get in the habit. Yeah. So I'm sure you are dying to know how I replace my radio.
mm-hmm.
So I've got all kinds of stuff here. This is a mixing bowl. This is my favorite good, solid copper mixing bowl that I use to whip egg whites in. And you whip egg whites because little tiny filings of copper come off when you're using one of these whisks. That thing. And so little bits of copper mix up with the egg whites, and that stops them from overbeating. Because if you overbeat egg whites, then they all go to curds and they have to be thrown away. So anyway, so I decided that I had a soul. So here's my soul. And so I thought of my soul as an open bowl down here somewhere in the middle of my body somewhere. So I'm listening to the radio, that's my mind, and it's going like this, rather like, my brain is being whipped up by the news, and it overflows into my soul, right? Because if you can have a restful soul, you could also then have a restless soul. So I thought, my soul is getting restless listening to all of this stuff all the time. So I need to turn the stuff off, and I need to take my bowl and tip it out and let my soul be this side up instead of like that. Right? So if anything does go into my mind and overflow, it hits the outside of the bowl and runs off. So what I've got inside this bowl here is space now. Rather than space waiting to acquire, I have space which is shielded and important to me because that space is my love. I'm loved by God in this space, and I love others in this space. I invite my neighbors into this space. Right? And if I do this with my soul, it's full of the world messing around. And I don't want that. I'm fed up with that. So this is what I decided to do. every time that I went to the radio, and it was impulsive, I went to the radio like I used to go for chocolate. I did stop eating chocolate. And I go to the radio because I was doing the laundry. I always play the radio when I'm doing the laundry. It doesn't matter what's on. And at meal times, I would do that. And in the kitchen, preparing meals, radio, radio, radio. But instead of that, I just went away, and I have a chair here which is comfortable, and I sat down in that camp, and in my mind, I made sure that my soul was in a space-related issue, not attachment. It was a releasing of these things. And I can't tell you how wonderful by the end of the week this is. I am having such joy at knowing there's space there which is not being violated. Now, I know I suffer from metaphors, and I know it's so hard for some people to catch up with me, but I'm so excited with this. I don't quite know how to describe it yet, as you can see, but it is that's been so cool. And I think I've got to the right hand. And during the week, I do listen to a thing called On Being. It's Trista Tippett, and she had a guest on, and this was the book the guest talked about. This is a lady who lives in a very blue area of the nation and went to live in a very red area of the nation in order to understand what they were so interested in from their perspective. She's written a whole book about this, which is absolutely disarming. I haven't read the whole book yet, but I am so excited by this book because I need to know how people can believe differently than myself. I really do. And if I don't, then I'm just being partial, and I don't want to do that. So that's that. Is there any other kind of other habit? Because I've got one other habit that I can share.
No, I kind of so I have this little note card that I wrote all my notes down, and as soon as it was my turn to talk, I blurted out all the things I wanted to say in 10 seconds really fast. But no, my conclusion or what worked for me was there was all these things that I forgot that I loved doing. Like,
yes,
I became so focused on other things and filled with kind of a hopelessness about so many things going on in the world that I kind of forgot that there were things right in front of me that I enjoyed doing that would give me like joy and energy in order to deal with more things like in my life. So it's just nice to remember those habits or those good habits that I used to have that brought me joy and like fuel my life.
I love them.
Can come back. They're not gone forever.
Yes, that is so cool. Yeah, and the only thing that I will add to that for me when I think about that one, when I was a brand new Christian in a Brethren Mennonite church where I was at the beginning, there was a group of somewhat charismatic people, and they were singing a little song which was just beautiful, and I remember being moved almost to tears with this simple little song. And the other day I caught myself singing it again, and I felt the same joy that I felt at 45 years ago in that church basement. So that's an example of looking back in time for something beautiful and bringing it back into our life today. That's another one of your beautiful things. Well done. That's great.
There's only so much room in our lives for habits. So if we fill them with good ones, then maybe the bad ones will just wash away.
Move off the plate. Okay, which brings me then to this one. Okay, so as you can see, there are 2 slices of cake here. I must tell you that I made this cake the other day and I was very thrilled with it. In fact, I was so thrilled with it that I found myself eating this size of slice. And I thought to myself, I can't keep on doing that. So I moved to this slice here, which, as you can see, is about 1/3 of the value. And by taking this one up mm, and actually savoring each bite, I was completely satisfied with that small slice. I think this has also got something to do with life. If we're really invested in our life that we have and something beautiful happens, like the sun just came out this moment and lit up the little tree that I planted for Trina. It's just flat out gorgeous out there. At that moment, if we can absorb that great blessing that we have at that moment, then there's something which is satisfying about our life. But what you just said a few minutes ago was, there's so much out there that needs to be fixed and dealt with. For example, the failure of the water system in Karachi. They're really having a really hard time in that city. It's really bad. And I got all upset about that whilst I'm living in this amazing environment of opportunity that I am today. Yes, I should feel sad about that. If there's nothing I can do, I can pray about it quickly and get on with my life. And I love your idea of finding those old things. I'm going to look back over my life for the things that I'm missing that I liked. Thank you.
I really like your point, specifically, not almost not as a metaphor, but specifically with the cake. Because I find myself like when I'm craving treats, I'll like go get a treat and I'll eat it while I'm doing something else, like while I'm watching a movie or something. And then I won't even
Yeah.
think about the treat at all. I'll just have consumed it and it'll be it. That'll have been like, I wanted a treat, I got a treat, I ate the treat, and I'm not even thinking about it. But if you're actually like,
Yeah.
and then of course 10 minutes later I want another one, so I go up and get another one. But if you're actually like
Sure.
sitting down and thinking about that treat as a treat and savoring that moment, I feel like you're so much more satisfied by that than just like
Yes.
consuming it while being busy with other things. I like that idea.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I've been sitting here saying to myself, so Graham, what are we going to talk about next? Because I don't even know whose turn it is to come up with an idea. Were you ready? Is it
No,
mine?
it's your turn.
Okay.
Don't do that to me, Graham.
Well, I just had an idea as I was sitting here. So I'm wondering whether I can put this to you without saying, let's do it. By the way, before I come up with my idea, would you give me more time to think about it? I hear that you've actually got some letters that have been written to us with is that right or not?
We did get a few comments. Here, let me pull them up. Yeah, so there was one that's a little short and sweet, but just our friend from before, Vegan Chef 75, just said, "I love this show. It truly gives me pause and an excuse to look inward." Which, I mean, same for me. It's great. It's a great excuse. Like, this is every week, and it's gonna happen no matter what. So it's a nice to have that just like excuse, because it's hard to do things that are good for you.
You know something? Whenever I did my programs in the past, I had one habit. I put my fingertips almost together so that you could put a cigarette paper between, not touching, and hold them really steady so that I could feel like I was steadying myself before I ran in and jumped over a chair and did all the rest of the stuff. I don't have to do that anymore because I feel so much at home sitting here waiting to see you that it's something I look forward to all week. There's no challenge. There's no performance. Nothing. It's just every week is peeling back the onion to a new revelation about the life that we have, and it's cool. I'm grateful. Thank you for being there. So, would you like to know the idea?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 5 things during this next week that we see that took our mind off the current because it was so remarkable and so enjoyable. 5 remarkable things that took our mind off the present moment.
Ooh,
Does
5
that
whole
work?
things, huh?
Yeah,
5
keep your note.
remarkable things. All right.
Yes. Remarkable enough to take our mind off what's going on around us, which is, of course, the politics of the day. Something which should distract us from that. Is that too much to ask for 5? Should we ask for 3 or 2?
No, I think shoot for the stars. Why not? We could find 5. I
Yeah,
distract
okay.
myself all day long, so there's got to be at least 5 of those that are remarkable, I hope.
I love it. Okay. Well, let's try that, my dear.
Yeah, so we will be searching this week for 5 specific things in order to have 5 tangible examples of the things that, and this isn't to say like we're not ignoring the news and politics and things like that, but we know that there is a point at which we will get overwhelmed. So trust that we are involved in our own way, but it can be a lot. And so sometimes you just need something to be something other than that. And so we'll be looking for 5 things this week that are other in a remarkable way.
And don't you like, I love that word remarkable, because I was toying with the idea of things that brought us joy. But that's not the thing. It's things that distract us from what is going on that we may not be able to handle in any way, but enough things that came which for our individual point of view was startling when we look back at the fact that they were there at all, instead of missing them in some way. So,
yeah,
and by
I'm
the way,
excited for this one. Because
good.
I love the ones where we're looking outward in like a positive light.
And do you think at home that you would do us a great honor? I mean, it would be if you also came up with 5 things that you'd noticed this week, and that you would let us know about that. That would be, you can't know just how much that we would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Love being with you again, darling. God bless.
All right, so that's what we will be thinking about this week. This has been Tea at 3. I'm Faye Schmidt. This is Graham Kerr, and we will see you next week. And please do remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and like the video if you enjoyed watching, and share with your friends if you think that there's something they can get out of it too. We'll see you next week.
God bless.